Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
And today I cannot carry this review by myself, but I can carry you with it as we finish our Player's Guide to Middle-earth review. Hey guys, jump down in the description below where you can find Nerdarchy, the newsletter, gain weekly tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
Jumping into this, we start off with Journeys.
Yes.
And this is the most complex portion of the Lord of the Rings section.
The Journey section was a emotional and an intellectual roller coaster ride for me, I must say. Because at first I started reading, I'm like, this is total bullshit. Like, why are we even covering this? What is this? And then I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool, and this is kind of good, and, well, this seems a little bit much. So, you know what? To take this whole section and condense it down, it's basically a series of skill challenges from 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, modified and placed into the Middle-earth setting.
But everything builds upon or compounds what you do in this phase.
Yes.
Both in the prep as well as in the actual action itself.
I wouldn't say overall I actually like it after I got through it, but I would not use it all the time because it'd be a pain in the ass. And like, if you actually have things in the game you want to get done, this will bring it to an ass-grinding halt and stop it.
So the way it works is, as you are getting ready to leave, you have to plan and figure out, there's all these roles, and where's everyone going to fit in? And if you don't have someone that's going to be a sufficient guide, you're boned. You're screwed. There is no way you are going to be happy.
No. Well, there's several roles, right, that have to be filled.
Yeah.
Guide, scout, hunter, and lookout, and they all have to be filled or you suffer disadvantages.
Right, but the guide is the utmost important throughout, because if you screw up that, you're gone. You have no way of achieving your goals because, oh, my survival roll failed.
Well, that's not true. Like, you still technically can have someone else be the guide without being good at it. It's just,
well, no. What I'm saying is, if you don't have someone in the guide position that has expertise, your cumulative rolls that you have to do throughout this whole phase, you're not going to roll high enough. And you're going to constantly accrue shadow points. You're going to constantly, suffer disadvantages throughout.
Now, when you say expertise, do you mean expertise as the ability or expertise in just...
Well, technically both, but legitimately the 5th edition turn expertise.
Right.
Because the numbers of your DCs are high.
It's going to be difficult. But you know what? Without any of them, you're gonna run into the same problems. It's going to be complications all over the place. And even with being good at a set thing, the way this is set up, it's still like you're making so many checks that you're just going to fail some.
Yes.
You can't pass them all. Now, granted, everything in here isn't based off of pass fail. There's definitely
there's gradation. But, you have your guide, which, relies on wisdom and survival proficiency. Your scout is in charge of setting up camp. You need essentially stealth and investigation. Your hunter, this is also someone that's going to rely on survival because they're the one getting you food. And then you have your lookout. Go figure, they need perception.
The idea is you can't have more than one person one person doing a job?
You can have more than one scout, hunter, and lookout, but you can only have one guide.
Okay.
And the guide is essentially, they're the ones that have the map, they're the ones that know where you're going, and for purposes outside of combat in regards to journey, they're in charge.
Right, and then if you don't actually have a role filled, like someone still has to do it, but they're at disadvantage.
Right. So, fill those slots, people.
Yeah. So you better have at least 4 people in your party. Now, it does say you can double up.
Right.
Someone can do 2 jobs, but I believe there's going to be penalties for that as well.
But you can't be guide and something else.
Okay.
Guide is like the lone job, if I remember correctly.
It's the alpha. It's the alpha. It's the omega.
So, like some of this harkens back to 2nd edition with like tables and consult, this type of situation.
Yes.
So, like, you've got an embarkation table with which goes up to 12 plus.
They like the D12s in this section.
Yeah.
So the idea is, before you set out, you determine how well you're prepared to set out. And that's what this table is. If you roll well, it's going to make all your other checks easier. Or if you roll poorly, it can make all your other checks suck.
Exactly.
And there's different factors that go into it. Type of terrain. Is it a area where the shadow dwells? Which, and every time they mention that, it's like, the bad guys, the orcs.
Exactly. Is it
Sauron,
blighted,
its influence.
Yeah. And then we actually move on to actually taking the journey. And then yet again, there's more rolling, another chart to consult. Like, if this were a simple, all right, let's make one thing and how well you do, great. But it's stacking that again and again. We're up to the point where we've got another, 1 to 11 type of situation.
Well, yeah, but we gotta let them slow down. We gotta let them know what actually these are steps here, and they're giving in steps. Step 1 is the embarkation. Step 2, the journey, events, and task rolls. Right. So this is basically seeing how well you do at those tasks, the jobs you were assigned while you're out there, as well as there are going to be events that happen. Now they're not all combat. They're not all bad.
Right.
But there's events, and they're based largely apart on what those checks are. If you do well, then there could be favorable things like your journey is much more pleasant. You make friends and influence people. You find good food to eat.
You have plenty of food. You can remove exhaustion. You can remove shadow points. Or
you find really cool, happy places to hang out.
Or it could be the other way. Gain shadow points. Get exhaustion. All these fun things and
get eaten by a troll.
Well, that's not actually one of the results, but combat encounters are absolutely a likely possibility. So like your lowest roll is a chance encounter, and you meet people, and it could go bad. It could go go good.
Well, actually, with the events, a lot of them are like that too. It's like the actual event roll, the number isn't good or bad. It's what happens with that event. And this is the weird part where the journey section has a lot of swing and randomness too.
Yes.
You can get the same roll as far as an event goes, but it can be good or bad depending on whether you passed or failed your check. And then you determine how good did you pass it by or how bad did you screw it up will determine how things went.
Right.
So it can be kind of swingy.
And then we go all the way up to the high thing of many meetings fly you fools. There it's yet another traveler, but it could be someone as powerful as Gandalf. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, you could just meet some merchants on the road or a roving band of orcs.
Well, no, it's designed to be someone of influence.
No. I'm saying at the very beginning, the base, the roll of a 1 on a D12, all the way up to you meet a Nazgul or you encounter Gandalf, and then from there, this could be good or bad. Even meeting the good person.
Right.
Like
you fail to recognize who they are.
You fail to recognize, and you don't get the benefit of it, or you offend them. It's one of the things in there as well.
So then we move on to step 3, which is the arrival phase. And depending upon how well you did on everything prior to, you could show up and you could just be utterly miserable. Now everything it's compounded from. So what was the terrain like? What was your previous, checks doing? So you could be weary to the bones, and you have to make saving throws to find out whether what actually winds up happening. And it says if you went through a path that was touched by the shadow, the DC is even harder. So it's pretty cool that you could arrive at your destination and have to make a save.
Well, yeah. So when you finally get to this step though. When you went through all those events, all of them are going to influence this final check, right? You're accumulating pluses and minuses, and you're going to have to do the accounting and the bookkeeping and go, do you end up with a net bonus or a net minus that's going to help you when you finally roll on this table?
Right.
And literally, one of the things for your destinations is you screwed up and you show up at the wrong place.
It's so true.
You show up at the wrong time, and you're not received well, or there's other things that are really good that your trip was fabulous. No matter what happened on it, you rolled so good. You found all the good in it, and you feel great for it, and you're rejuvenated and refreshed. So there's
inspired and filled with hope.
So there's kind of this huge swing of things that can happen when you finally get there.
So with these things, there's definitely some things that you could import some of it into a 5th edition game. I think with some slight modifications. I think if you try to take the whole thing as is, it's not gonna port really well, but it definitely fits the Lord of the Rings or the Middle Earth stuff. So if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, you see times where they've arrived and, oh no, the party's been split, or people are dead, or both.
So I kind of disagree in the sense that, like, whole cloth, you're right. You probably cannot just take this and port it into your game. But the concept whole cloth can. Like, you would want to change it up and tailor it to your campaign. But again, like, it's interesting and there's some fun things in there, but I think it would be tedious to do it every time your adventurers want to go out on a journey.
Right.
And I feel that way even if I was playing the Middle Earth game, not just if I imported the 5th edition as a journey.
Right.
I don't think the journey was that important. Like, the cool things that happen along the way of the journey, yeah, that was kind of cool. In other games, it's already kind of dealt with. They're called random encounters or planned encounters. They just try to structure it a little bit differently here, somewhat give it a Middle Earth feeling. Used sparingly, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I agree.
Used excessively, I'm going to go with the word tedious.
I'll agree with that one as well. So the next section we get into is the Shadow, and this talks about the sources of corruption and how to handle corruption. And I think the major impact that I like to see here is it reminds you that as a player, you are a hero. So, like, there is no middle ground of, okay, well, I want to be a villain. I want to be someone who is an anti-hero. No, that doesn't happen in this game. Using the intimidation skill, just saying I'm gonna make a check gets you a shadow point. Like, it's like, holy crap.
Yeah, and if you're not balancing those actions out, you're going to move slide further and further away into the area where this character is no longer playable.
Right. So the real Titan version of shadow points is you accrue shadow points when bad stuff happens to you, or when you choose to do things that make you not a hero, like using intimidation. When you accrue more shadow points than your wisdom score, you are essentially falling into madness. Anytime you roll a check, and essentially anytime you're rolling a d20, if you roll the difference between your shadow score and your wisdom, you drop into madness. You accrue permanent shadow points.
Permanent shadow points and flaws.
And shadow flaws. Mm-hmm. And these flaws wind up going up the tree. 4 times you do this, you're done. You're an NPC. You're dead. You're leaving the game. However it's going to work for your backstory. Essentially, if you're an elf, they say you're getting on the boats and you're getting out because you can't handle doing this anymore. If you're basically anything else,
there's a couple outcomes. One is you become a bad guy. Another one is you commit suicide, and the other is you act so poorly that the people around you will kill you.
Well, I think one of them was like you just become a wandering madman as well.
Well, that could be there as well.
So that's the shortened, condensed version of these few pages, but they go into detail about what type of shadow flaws are there, what kind of things would you...
The triggers.
Yeah.
Because the triggers are anguish, blighted places, misdeeds,
tainted treasures...
Yeah, so they're all those, and then it talks about the kind of like the consequences. You know what I like this section for? Say, if you wanted to play more of like a Cthulhu style game, like this section is awesome to import into that game.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it, but when you say it, I can't.
It's almost like a really nice substitute for Insanity Rules.
Yeah.
Or a version thereof. So you might want to look at it for that. Literally, it's set up in a way that goes, you're the heroes, and you're expected to act a certain way, and if you don't, you could lose your character in this game. So a lot of the murder hobo style D&D will not work in Middle Earth, because eventually you're going to succumb to the shadow and be removed. Everyone becomes Boromir. Boromir. Oakenshield, Thorin Oakenshield, and they're 2 perfect examples of 2 different types of shadow corruptionists that people have succumb to.
Right.
One is dragon sickness,
Yep, that was Thorin Oakenshield.
and the other one was
Lust of Power.
yes. Well, actually, I almost felt like he fell into like two of them.
Yeah.
It was pretty. As per the descriptions. What are they? We just mentioned the two, so we might as well give them all off. Wandering Madness.
Curse of Vengeance and Lure of Power.
Yeah, so Curse of Vengeance and Lure of Power were the two that I was kind of feeling for him. Matter of fact, I think both of them use quotes from him, so
That's possible.
that might be why.
We move on to the audience section, and this is one it's only like a page and a half, 2 pages that you really get into because there's pictures and charts. The only thing that I really like out of this section was that there's a chart which shows the actual relations between this settlement and this town, so that if you're encountering someone of this place for the first time, this is the standard that they're going to do. So you've got all the different places across, and then you have the different markings: favor, friendly, neutral, unknown.
You know what this chart literally is? This is literally first and second edition, but in those editions it was based off of races and how they perceive each other and how you start off with your.
In this game, the races are the cultures
and stuff. Yeah,
and that's exactly what it is. So it's like if you're a barding and you meet a rider of Rohan, they don't know each other. They don't have a way of dealing with you because they don't know anything about you, and when you try to do something, they're set DCs of what they're willing to do. So in order to actually get a favor out of a rider of Rohan, as you being a barding, you're going to have to make a traditions check, DC 20, in order to just get a place to sleep for the night. Anything else, and they're like, no, go away.
Well, and that's kind of the theme that's kind of gone throughout the book too, is how unopened different cultures are. And people don't travel back and forth. It's really like when you start off as an adventurer in Middle Earth, it's really where things are just starting to open up. But because a big part of that is because of the fall of Smog and his treasure being dispersed, and it's opening up trade. But at the same time, also the shadows starting to creep in.
Right. Well, I mean, even if you look at Lord of the Rings, when Aragorn is looking for Pippin and Merry, they're like, we're looking for hobbits, and the riders have no idea what they are because the hobbits are unknown.
Yeah, they kind of refer to them as children.
So it's like, they be children, wee ones to you. It's like, all right, this is kind of amusing. But that's essentially what the audience section is, dealing with, meeting with people for the first time.
And that comes up also in the journey section. The audience section comes into play in the journey section in a couple places. A lot of the events that come up, like one of the good things that you can have is actually the opportunity to get audience with someone important is one of the spots. And also at the end of the journey, when you finally get to your destination, in that phase as well, if things have gone really well during your journey, it helps you with the audience, getting an audience or audience phases. So that comes into play, so I thought it's worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we move on to the fellowship phase. And for those of us who have been playing for a long time, this is essentially downtime with rules. And there's different things that you can do with your downtime, because they say that typically an adventure is a year. So they want to give you downtime because people don't want to travel when it's snowing. Essentially, the land of Lord of the Rings, it's all once, they're all experiencing the seasons at the same time. It's not like our globe where it's summer here and winter here and vice versa. When we go through here, it's rules for, if you've accrued more than, so many levels of exhaustion, you can't just say, it goes away. You need to legitimately rest and recover.
That was a big thing that we did not bring up in the journey section is how many different... You can die from exhaustions. Like, reading through that section, I kept thinking, oh my God, they're going to die from exhaustion, not from a monster.
It's so true. So, if you've got enough exhaustion, like, you can't just be like, all right, well, I'm going to rest and make it go away. The actual resting in this game is vastly different than the standard 5th edition thing of like, I'll sleep 8 hours, I get all my hit points back, I get rid of a level of exhaustion. Doesn't work that way in this game. Like, exhaustion goes away much, much slower, and we're talking months, and the only thing you're going to do is rest. And that will get rid of, that'll restore all of your hit points, it'll get rid of all of your exhaustion, and restore one condition. And that's if you choose to do nothing during your fellowship phase. The other,
Also, Sanctuary, something about that as well, right?
well, I'll go through. So there's recovery, there's training. Now, when we talked about in virtues, there's essentially feats that you would take that give you tiered abilities, and one of them is you can train to unlock another one of those said abilities. So that's one of the things that you can do. You can heal corruption, and that's where you try to get rid of shadow points. You can meet your patron. You can open a sanctuary, which basically sanctuaries are very important throughout the game. They're places where you can actually get rest undeterred throughout the night. And when you open a sanctuary, you're basically making a place blessed, and it helps the shadow stop from being able to get there. You can receive a title, which means you've actually done something big enough that the lords of your area actually bestow upon you a title, which it comes with boons as well as requirements. And then you can actually research, so you can make a history, nature, lore, or riddle intelligence check with advantage, and if you succeed, you can ask 3 questions from the game master, or lore master in this case. If you don't succeed, you still get to ask 3 questions, and the lore master has the ability to mislead you or give you falsified information, so it's kind of cool. False, cryptic, or misleading answers.
It is, but these should probably be secret die rolls so that they don't actually know, I would think.
But it's like, all right, well, one of them could be true.
Well, that is true.
And then the last bits are just pre-generated characters. So if you want to be able to jump right in, there's characters that are already ready to go.
So with that concludes our review of the Player's Guide to Middle-earth. Descriptions in the link below, as always, where you can get your own copy. And with that, you can like, share, and subscribe.
Don't forget to check out our social links all down below.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.